As the sun rises, exposing the kingdom of Ligus, something else rises too. The chaos. It's been rising for years and years, slowly building up. Nothing good will come of it, only bad. And only something special can stop the building and save the kingdom. The empire, that is. It was once a great place. A place where warriors came. Great warriors, paladins, heroes, they all came here. But eventually something happened. All of the great leaders were slain, and there was nobody left to protect it. But maybe there will be a savior. The savior must be very special, though, if he wishes to clean up the mess that Ligus brought upon itself, as Ligus has a very complicated past. Great battles for the freedom of Ligus occurred many times, and Ligus won all of them. It became its own empire, and was the world power. But centuries after the founding of Ligus, all of its royalty were killed. They were assassinated. Nobody knows why this happened, but it would change the course of Ligus's future, forever. It would no longer be a prosperous empire, but it would crumble to dust. With no leadership to guide it, Ligus would be taken over by criminals. Ligus was in bad shape, but out of the dust, two great buddies were retrieved, buddies of the kings. The small entities were not living, but they held the king's spirit, and perhaps they could save the empire. But when they were taken out, strange creatures were born, malformed things that should not exist. These malformed creatures took what had awakened them, the twin buddies, and returned them to secrecy. But by leaving the third buddy where it was, they had left a clue for any future explorers that would want to save the kingdom. They would know what to do. They would have to find the two other buddies. But with strange creatures roaming around, the journey will be difficult for the one who wishes to save Ligus. We can only wish him luck. Strangely enough, the savior would come from a very secluded part of the empire of Ligus, a part shrouded by trees and by its strange geography. It lies at the base of the mountain that stores the Duke's archives, a very treacherous place. And the Savior's mission would be monumental. If he were to complete it, he would be a true legend. The few sane individuals who still reside in the Empire of Ligus can only hope the Savior will be successful in his quest. This is Nuber, a normal boy. He would often watch the news with his family and would be up to date on current world events. He would also play outside and had fun doing physical activity. He could also lift weights and sculpt his body like most other boys. This was fun for him. But one day, it all changed. His life was turned upside down. He was on a mission. A noble mission. The day after Nuber fell over in the forest, he was a different boy. A different man. He had not just been changed physically by the fall, but mentally his mind was changed, and he was on a mission. This said mission that Nuber had to perform was vital to the planet. It would allow it to continue living. It was that important. In Nuber, he may have to look to the heavens to find what he's looking for. After Nuber woke up from his fall, he was dazed. But he could feel in his heart what he had to do and what his mission was. But first, he had to find a weapon, and a weapon he would find. Now that Nuber found a weapon, he felt that he could fight his enemies, and he had found an enemy. That enemy was the first step in his mission, but he would take some damage in other ways. Nuber thought he could harness the power of nature and the trees specifically. But he was not able to. It was too strong for him. Better luck next time, Nuber. Nuber found a comfortable spot and felt he should take a rest. After resting, Nuber regained his strength from his earlier fails. He made his way across the plains and decided to go to the place where he came from, the bushes. This may not have been a wise choice, though. Nuber didn't make it far. But who says his journey is over just yet? And, in fact, Nuber's quest wasn't over just yet. He was to be reborn, a new individual, with different powers. He was more intelligent and stronger, a better version. Oddly enough, it was actually Nuber who shot himself in the forest. The more intelligent Nuber shot the original Nuber. He did this because he saw that original Nuber was failing at the quest, and there had to be an upgrade. So, the newer Nuber was born. He was born into a world where chaos was inching closer and closer every day, and faster than before. It was darker, stormier, and overall worse in this new world. And so it begins once again.
Where am I?
At first, the new Nuber was confused, but eventually, due to his increased intelligence, he sensed what he had to do. It took a while, but he adapted to his surroundings.
Whoa. Stronghold.
Nuber woke up in the same place he did in his last life, the burning bushes, a great forest. The bushes provide shelter and provide rooms, but it's very dangerous there. An individual before Nuber had occupied the area. They created some furniture and found some useful tools.
Who could have built this? I cannot believe that I have found this.
Nuber knows, though, he must find a weapon soon. Still need to find a weapon. The burning bushes make up a vast structure, a stronghold for warriors similar to Nuber.
There's so many rooms here. Where could I be? We're going back to where I started.
The great pine seen here is the force that brought Nuber to this area to save the kingdom of Ligus. Its power is immense, but something is killing it from the inside, as you can see. Its scars are large, and it needs help. Only Nuber can do this.
Still need to find a weapon.
In the meantime, though, Nuber needs to find a weapon. A good weapon. He's about to find what he's looking for. A great sword. A great sword. Rusty, but it will do. The only way that the kingdom of Ligus can be saved, at this point in its crumbling stages, is if a brave warrior like Nuber can find the king's twin buddies and bring them to the great altar in the burning bushes. The chances of Nuber procuring these buddies are very slim. This is because they are protected by an evil force. To overcome this force, Nuber must be great, he must be very strong, and he must persist in his quest in what he feels is right for the kingdom of Ligus. But in the meantime, Nuber noticed something off. He felt it. It just felt strange, it felt bad, and he had to investigate, but he didn't want to come too close to injuring himself. Nuber does not know why he felt this way, why he felt that this area, this object, was strange, but he did, and it was likely for the best. Nuber spotted an enemy and decided to attack. Scrawny rats stood no chance, as one fell swoop from Nuber's great blade would kill almost any foe that he would encounter anyway. It was time for Nuber to take a rest, and he found a quartz rock to rest upon. The cooling was very, very good for Nuber. Nuber had also found an edible plant, or so he thought. He probably should not have eaten this plant if he was looking back, but sometimes things happen, and this wasn't the worst thing in the world, as it gave some unusual powers to Nuber.
Go away, beast.
Nuber had sighted a beast, which was not a good sign at this point. You see, Nuber was close to one of the protectors of one of the king's great buddies, and he has his own beasts. Sometimes they get out, like this one, a strange dog-like creature. This means that Nuber is close to one of the great king's buddies. The entity seen here is a royal guard. He protects one of the king's buddies and is a fierce opponent. Nuber's not ready for this mission. Once he sees him, he backs away immediately. He's not ready for that battle. And he returns to the burning bushes to get a rest. While sitting on the bench, Nuber thinks about what's to come and what he's already done. He reflects on many things he's done, including the consumption of the strange plant that he found earlier. Maybe it wasn't edible, he thinks. Only time will tell. Nuber takes a much-needed rest by the tree, sleeping standing up, as he needs to be alert in case anything occurs while he is sleeping. When Nuber wakes up, he pursues an idea that he had while he was sleeping last night. He travels to the lower part of the burning bushes, the more dangerous part. There are enemies here, but there are also rewards. He sees an enemy immediately. A weak enemy. He makes a bad decision though. He decides to eat it. Nobody knows why Nuber did this, but he did. And the results were bad. He threw up the remains of the creature, a strange white substance. But on the bright side, he did find some edible plants. He knew these were edible. Everybody does. He ate them and had some good benefits. They taste good, and they give you energy. After eating the berries from the forest, Nuber took a rest, as he planned to continue down into the burning bushes deeper, which would be treacherous, and needed some sleep. He slept standing up again, as he wanted to avoid any possible damage that would hinder his journey. It is said in ancient legend that there is a great twisting tree at the deepest depths of the burning bushes. If this were true, Nuber would have a great benefit, as it is said if you sit on the tree you will gain much energy. And if Nuber needed anything right now, it was energy, as he was about to face off against a great protector of one of the king's buddies. And, luckily for Nuber, the legend is true. This is the tree. A great structure created by nature. You can see that it allows for a bench, as its shape hugs the ground for a while, and then continues up. These vines provide a barrier, as on the other side of those vines, very, very strange things happen. and nobody shall ever go over there. Nuber's lucky to find this, as it will help him greatly in his battles. This, however, may not. But you never know. Sometimes things have benefits that you won't expect. Nuber can't believe he found it. He had heard about it as a kid, but he never really believed that it could be possible. By touching the tree, you are granted powers of energy. More specifically, the tree grants powers of physical energy, mainly arm strength. But Nuber had found this. And, like many things so far in his journey, he decided to eat, this time drink, the strange substance he found. It was rotten sludge in a blue container. If this was any other time, Nuber would stick down here a while longer to experience the tree and all of its powers. But he knew he had a mission to complete today, and he went off to do it. He was exiting the lower burning bushes. A pretty easy journey once you get past the depths, as it opens up and creates some rooms, as you can see here. This is actually one of the lower rooms, so Nuber still has a while to go. There's also a secret exit seen here. Nuber sees it, and is happy to see a secret exit. Nuber loves when stuff happens that he doesn't expect or doesn't see the first time around, and he takes the exit. Wisely, there's nothing wrong with it. With all this good, though, there must be bad to balance out. Nuber found a stick he thought would be a good weapon, but it turned out it was rotten. If it was as hard as his sword, it would be much, much better. Nuber actually got hurt by the breakage, as it shot a shard of the stick into his body, more specifically his gut. It didn't penetrate, but it sure did hurt. Maybe he'll find something better. He still has a little while to go until he gets to the protector. Nuber encounters and kills many small enemies on the way to his quest, but nothing too major, luckily for Nuber. Killing these enemies gives Nuber pride, as he knows what he's doing. He's helping to save a kingdom. Nothing had hurt him up until this point. But at this point, something did hurt him. Badly. It knocked him out and stunned him for a while. He was on there on the ground. He was on the ground for a couple hours. He got up and was confused, but he figured out what had happened. The thing had ran away. Nuber was weak now, but he found a plant to eat. It hurt your mouth a little bit, but it was very effective at curing ailments. And Nuber had a hurt leg. He rubbed some of it on his leg, too. Nuber was now on his way to complete his quest. He was slightly weakened, but nothing noticeable or major. He had encountered this strange wooden structure again, and wasn't taking any chances. There were only a couple minor hiccups on his way. He impaled himself with a sword, but nothing major. Although this was a major wound, it didn't hurt too bad for Nuber, as he had gotten strength from that twisted tree. This was like just a regular scratch at this point due to the power from the tree. Now Nuber was ready to take on his foe. He was happy. Happy that he could help cure the world of its chaos. The battle. As you saw, Nuber was very hungry and tired after the battle, so he ate part of his opponent in an attempt to heal his wounds. While resting, Nuber thought about how great it was to actually have gotten one of the king's buddies. It would be a monumental task to get the other one, but at least he had gotten one at this point. He was going to pick it up and return it to its altar, but he waited a couple minutes and rested by the fire. Nuber was getting up and picking up the buddy. There it was in all its glory, the first king's buddy. It gave Nuber pride for what he was doing, and he returned to the burning bushes. Nuber was so excited that he was able to return one of the great king's buddies, and he was able to return it safely. There it lay with the original buddy, but another buddy was still missing. But after returning the buddy, Nuber didn't make it far. He was killed. It was actually Nuber who killed him. Nuber himself. The tertiary Nuber killed the second Nuber because he knew he was going to be ineffective at his upcoming quest, the second king's buddy. The world was in a greater state of decay, and there needed to be another Nuber to solve the problems. An even more advanced Nuber that could stop the spreading of the great webs. More intelligent and stronger. The webs were taking over and were a sign of darkness. But Nuber had to look to the light. This third Nuber was stronger than ever before and was super intelligent. He could probably kill almost any enemy that he would face. It could bring down the second protector with ease. Or maybe it wouldn't go so smoothly. All we know is that he's waking up now. Just like before, he needs to find a weapon. An even greater weapon than he had before in his second life. An ultra great sword, the greatest of all weapons. Due to this Nuber's intense intelligence, he knows what he must do right away. Chop the great root. Or at least one of them. This will drastically weaken the final boss. But he must find the other one. If both roots are chopped, then there will be no force field around the boss himself. The fight will be much easier. If no roots are chopped, the fight is virtually impossible. This is why Nuber is doing this. But, aside from the bigger things, Nuber fell. He also got impaled by his own sword, drastically hurting him. But this damage that was called drastic was not very drastic to this Nuber, as he was stronger than ever. This would do very little damage in the long run, but would hurt him temporarily. It was time for him to continue, to pursue his goals. He got up and left. When Nuber crossed the Great Plains, he saw something he didn't like the look of, and he knew why this time, because he'd fell on it in his first life, so he kicked it away. He continued across the plains, was still hurt, but recovered. He recovered later on in his trip in the plains. Because the trip was long, Nuber decided he would rest. And he also saw an edible rock. Not many rocks are edible, but this one was, and he knew it. Because of his intelligence. He promptly ate it. Because of the rock Nuber consumed, he had a temporary boost to energy, and decided to train with his weapon. A very long training session, this worked him out and got him ready for any battles that he would face. His movements are swift and are connected well. This is due to his strength and his experience. Nuber has been doing this for a long time. If Nuber used these moves in combination, any foe would die easily. Any foe of medium toughness. Strong foes would take a little bit more, and easy foes would die in one hit, especially with this ultra great sword. After this training session, Nuber was ready to fight the second protector. He was looking for him, but he couldn't find him. It was very strange. He hit that metal thing to attract him, but he never showed up. Nuber wondered where he was and why he wasn't in his usual spot, and why the buddy was gone too. He thought that he might not be ready. So he decided to return to the burning bushes and fight smaller enemies.
Head.
When Nuber got to the bushes, he walked in like it was his own home. After all, it probably was. The thought of fighting smaller enemies really came to him when he looked to the sky. The sky told him what to do.
Eat.
So did the dying great pine, which needed help urgently. And so it was. Nuber was off on a mission to kill smaller enemies to gain experience. Nuber had fought many enemies similar to this small enemy. He was down in the forest for many hours exploring and fighting. He took the energy from his fallen foes and absorbed it himself. This prepared him for his great battle with the second protector. Also, by killing these small enemies, Nuber was freeing the world of some chaos. A small amount, but it still existed. Enemies. After Nuber was done killing, and this made people who were a little bit inexperienced would not die because there were less enemies to fight, saving their lives. Nuber secretes himself from the burning bushes and is very happy to have killed some small enemies and therefore gained some experience. But even though he is temporarily relieved, he knows there is still a major task at hand, the second protector of the second king's buddy. He kills one more small enemy, seen right here, but something bad is about to happen. When throwing the enemy away, he hits his leg with the great sword, a very sharp weapon, and it damages him badly. He is forced to crawl. This is very uncomfortable for him, but he sees a bench on the horizon, a familiar bench that he has seen before in previous lives, and since he is so smart now, he can remember what he has seen in the previous lives and can improve on his previous acts because of this. He crawls along to it, very slowly, but he eventually comes in reach of the bench. Due to his increased strength, he is able to use just his arms to pull himself up onto the surface of the bench. The bench is comforting and warm to him, as he's been crawling on the ground for a very long time now. Once he crests the surface of the bench, he begins thinking about Omig Oolagar, the Chaos Leader, and what he can do if Nuber fails in his quest. He knows he must defeat him, but first he must defeat the second protector. Once ready, Nuber gets up again and begins to treat his leg. He simply rubs it with his hands, hoping to massage the aching muscles, and then uses his sword to help treat the wound, the flat side that is, as he doesn't want to cut himself once again. That would hinder him greatly, as a big battle is coming up next. Nuber takes one more minute to think, and then decides it is time to finally act upon what he's been thinking about for the past while. But when he does get up and progress through his journey, he sees this, a red warding ball. These strange creatures are living, but one would not be able to know that immediately, as they don't move on their own or have any other obvious form of life. Instead, they just sit there, and Nuber successfully defeated this one. Although they can bring bad luck and old tales, but hey, who believes them? Now, after long periods of delay, Nuber is finally ready to take on his next foe, the second protector. But he does hear something strange and throws his sword out into this open plain. He runs to investigate it and feels very strange. Something surreal is going on. He can't point his finger on it or anything else, but he just knows it. There are multiple thoughts tickling the back of his mind, but before he can think about them, he falls to the ground. This is not good. He's unconscious and has been damaged by the fall. Something has taken into his mind and manifested itself through actions in his body, and may try to undermine his actions without him even knowing. There are multiple possibilities to solve this case, one being the warding red ball, but that's only substantiated by old tales that have no true interpretation or correct meaning. The other, however, is 100% certain. Omig Oolagar is on track to defeating Nuber, and if he can manifest himself into his body physically, he can do a lot of damage to Nuber's quest, therefore furthering his advantage in the race. But now, aside from the cause, Nuber is getting up from his slumber. This is not Nuber, though, at least in the mind. The body is Nuber's, but the mind is something else, whether it be the ball or Omig Oolagar, most likely Omig Oolagar. There's only one more thing left to solidify the bond between this strange other creature and Nuber's body. To physically harm Nuber's body, in this case a stab, through the abdomen. This makes it so they are connected now, in only a very, very strong force, one that can only be caused by a couple of things.
can separate the connection between the two entities. But the goal here is clear and obvious. The thing controlling Nuber's mind now wants to gain access to the burning bushes and destroy the great tree that brought Nuber here in the first place to save the kingdom of Ligas. If it is destroyed, then all hope is lost and Omig Oolagar will reign supreme for the foreseeable future of Ligas. The only thing left that can help Nuber and save the kingdom are the buddies. There are currently 2 buddies, and if they put their power together, they can stop this entity that is controlling Nuber's body before it destroys the tree. This would, however, take immense stimulus and would be a rare activity for the buddies. We're about to see here if the kingdom will be saved. Well, since Nuber has been pushed back, his body that is, it appears that the buddies have worked. Their energy is now low, but the tree is saved and the quest can continue. Omig Oolagar still has a chance at being dethroned. And it appears Nuber has regained consciousness. He knows exactly what happened, but he doesn't know the cause. He just knows that something else had taken form in his body and tried to destroy the kingdom upon him. But now it is time to get up, and he really has to go destroy the second protector to advance his quest. He's maddened and angry. And that means he is powerful. Protector 2.
Chaos.
After Nuber successfully defeated the second protector, of which he was very proud of, as you can see, he consumed him. He was sure to grab the second buddy, the third, that is, the second he has gotten, but the third in the total collection. And he successfully placed it in the altar in the burning bushes, next to the other 2 buddies. The first buddy he found and the original buddy.
I think something needs to be established here. The chaos is building, and at an alarming rate. You may hear creatures around the kingdom of Ligas start making noises because they are being disturbed by the chaos. They are crying out for help, but Omig Oolagar is strangling their airways as he pollutes the world with his chaotic essence. You will need to work fast, but if he does, he will be able to defeat it. And it continues.
But overall, he was looking to the main point that Omig Oolagar was on the horizon and not too far away. He felt he had to prepare, and the first step was shaving his head. This extra hair was weighing him down and was unnecessary in battle. It also made him look weak, as he has many scars on his head that proved battle that were being hidden and not displayed. There is no reason to keep this hair, it also keeps him too warm, and Nuber, he is hot-blooded. And this is the final product. Nuber has shaved his hair completely with his ultra-sharp sword. Very beneficial to have this shaved head. He is proud of himself for this great job. Here's his head. After Nuber completed the shaving of his head, he was ready to continue exploring and further elevate his status before he ventured to defeat Omig Oolagar. He ventured to the lower burning bushes, which he's done before, but something new was here this time. It appeared to be a pitchfork, a kind of tool that was used by peasants. But this was a sharpened pitchfork and would be very deadly if ever used in battle. Maybe not as deadly as his sword, but it was surely a great accessory. He decided to throw it out of the burning bushes and would return to it when he was ready. Nuber continued exploring and killed some enemies. He found some food off of them, but nothing much. They just helped him use his sword and gain some strength on the way. But anyway, to Nuber's surprise, he found a second weapon. This appears to be a great hammer, one with no solid tip, but 4 sharp tips that allow for piercing. He'll keep it like the pitchfork. He'll also try to train with it later. This will help his ability using it. And as Nuber ventures further into the burning bushes, he finds the second great root. This will greatly weaken Omig Oolagar. He has already chopped the first root, and chopping the second will destroy a force field that would have been around him if no roots were chopped at all. Now that he has done this, he feels that he can progress on his quest and exit this place, as it is not offering him too much in the way of anything except for the roots. But right as he is about to leave, he sees something. Yet another weapon. This is a maul. It's a kind of pickaxe and axe in one. And it is very heavy and is able to crush skulls easily. That's what Nuber needs at this point. Omig Oolagar does, in the end, have a skull. And he decides to test it out on this rock. If it breaks the rock in a couple of swings, it should be good, Nuber thinks. It does take a little while, but because Nuber has a lack of training, he's not using it as effectively as he could. He will train with it later, though, as he will with the pitchfork and great hammer. He's hoping to prepare for the fight with Omig Oolagar, which has been mentioned previously. But not just that. There will be other enemies on the way to the fight that he will encounter and will need to defeat. Nuber is tired after finding all these weapons and decides to go back to the upper burning bushes to rest. He admires his collection that he's thrown out of the burning bushes, and then enters the upper burning bushes. But when he does find himself in the upper burning bushes, he sees something that catches his eye, something that wasn't there before when he had gone there a couple minutes ago. It's a strange rock, a bluish-green color, sort of a teal or turquoise. It's called titanite. There's one small shard and one large shard here. These can be used to enhance the ability of any steel weapon, that which Nuber has, his greatsword. Once Nuber sees it, since he is so smart after his rebirth, he decides to put it on his weapon. Titanite in the ancient history of Legas has been used throughout the history. It's been used by royal guards and kings for their weapons, sometimes ornamental, but mostly for the function, because titanite brings more powerful weapons with sharper edges and more durability. Because the rock is etched on the surface, it allows the steel to bond with it and create a new material. This is very useful when fighting. And special forms of titanite are needed for weapons that are not steel, such as stone or other strange materials. This can be twinkling titanite, or titanite scales, or demon titanite. All forms of titanite come from different things, some from living entities, and some naturally were born whenever Legas was born. Nuber knows all this history, and that even furthers his desire to put it on his weapon, and he does successfully. He's very excited from this, and has even more motivation to train with the new weapons he just found. Even though they don't have titanite, they can be useful in their own ways. Nuber just hopes he won't hurt himself like he did before. Although Nuber was excited from the training session, he was also tired. Luckily, he saw a familiar bench on the horizon, the same bench that he had used whenever he hurt himself tragically. Whenever Nuber got to the bench, he, of course, began thinking, as always, but not just about Omig Oolagar. There was still one other thing keeping him from accessing Omig Oolagar fully. That's the Great Shocker. He will find that later and break it. It's a strange object that allows Omig Oolagar to retain his force field even after 2 roots are broken, made up of a spring and a ball. But here, Nuber has hurt himself once again. He has not directly hurt himself, though. It was the result of a strange insect, a spider. Not a spider, though. It's an arthropod with 36 legs, and it leaves a star-shaped imprint on him. Nuber is very upset with himself because he thought, due to his increased intelligence, he should have realized this. Here is the marking that it leaves on one. Not pleasant to endure, but the physical pain is minute compared to it. The emotional trauma is much worse. Nuber had to pass some gas and was ready to press on his journey to find the Great Shocker, keep his tools, and eventually defeat Omig Oolagar. But the small things, like that insect bite, do eventually add up on Nuber, that make him feel like he's insignificant and cannot complete his task. The only thing that can truly propel Nuber over the finish line is his own motivation and what lies upon his success, the future of a kingdom. But anyway, as Nuber throws his tools down, he sees another object, another red warding ball. He knows that right after he attacked the red warding ball the first time, a bad effect occurred. That is, his body was taken over by something else. But Nuber strongly believes that is Omig Oolagar's doing, as it is the logical belief. Just another enemy killed. One more milestone in the path to victory. But something strange happens. Nuber's tools vanish. Again, coming right after the killing of the red warding ball. Nuber is not happy about this. He rages. He thinks it's absolutely uncalled for anything like this to happen and questions the reality of Omig Oolagar. He believes the red warding ball may have done it, but he can't be sure, as Omig Oolagar is trying to get an advantage over him, and taking away his skull-crushing weapons would definitely bring that. Nuber's still mad. And now would be a good point to address something. Nuber's clothing. Nuber was taken into the kingdom of Legus from another realm. Therefore, he only had a certain amount of clothes on him, that being casual wear of a 13-year-old boy. This includes t-shirts, shorts, and slides or flip-flops. Trust me, if it was Nuber's decision, he would definitely choose to bring full armor, made of rock or steel, but this is all he has. He's still mad. But he does see a tower on the horizon. This tower is one that he has never investigated, although has been next to it a numerous amount of times. It's always puzzled him why he hasn't gone in. It must have just been low priority for him. but he decides it's time to go up and see what lurks on the top of the tower. Who knows, it could be another beneficial weapon that could replace the tools that have been stolen from him. Aside from these current events, I think it should also be reiterated that this is a residential section of Legas. There are common homes here. There's nothing elaborate, like a castle, but a castle does lurk on the horizon. That is Nuber's eventual goal. When he is done with his quest, he will go there to solidify his victory. He will transport himself back into his original realm, and will not be Nuber anymore. He will be his original self, the other individual before Nuber. But anyway, Nuber has seemed to have found the tower, and there are some sticks at the bottom, but of course these are sticks and not swords. They are less durable, bear less power, and, aside from a few, do not have any special abilities. Although wood is able to carry magic much better than steel. When Nuber crests the tower, though, he notices something strange. It is dark, and it is blue. It is darker up here as it is so high up, thousands of feet in the air. It takes Nuber a while to get to the top, but he is rewarded. He finds these, a collection of sticks and clubs and bats. They're all made of wood, but there is one that stands out to him that he will get to after he's done sorting these others. He knows there's possibility in all of them, but highly doubts it, as they are mundane looking. Those are the burning bushes Nuber has been exploring for the past while. You can see they form a complex, and that's the Great Mountain. Nuber begins sorting sticks and getting rid of the junky, weak ones that he will never use. As why would he leave these for another explorer to mistake as good, and then eventually end up sacrificing himself and other consequences too? There are 4 main principles to the magic of wooden weapons. That is fire, magic, lightning, and dark. Fire is useful against human or undead creatures, while lightning is useful against dragon and dragon-like creatures with scales. Magic is useful against knights and steel armor, and dark is useful against all other things. All of these sticks have trace elements of these properties, but not all of them are highlighted. For example, some of these sticks have slight lightning abilities, but can only be felt if one swings the stick extremely hard, or is very familiar with how the stick handles, and is able to tap out the power. This is not Nuber. He's looking for a quick solution.
Took.
But something does catch his eye. It's the curved dark sword of Lumpus, a sacred weapon that has been mentioned in many ancient texts in Legas' history. It has very, very, very prominent abilities in all of the categories, that is, fire, magic, lightning, and dark. It is an elemental weapon, but still does a lot of physical damage, as it does have a physical body. The reason it is mentioned so much in historical texts is because it was a king's weapon and was used throughout history very much. Even as it aged, it kept its durability and is still in one piece today. Nuber thinks he should restore it to the Ultima Altar, another sacred item in Legas history. It was used to grant weapons special powers, and weapons that lie on it are appreciated. It shows one's dedication. But now, Nuber is training once again to prepare for his battles. Right now, he is currently training with a club that is also a sickle and a scythe, and an axe. It's a combination weapon, which means it's weaker in all of its categories, but can deliver harsh blows still. Now he's brought out a curved halberd. This is very good at slashing and cutting, but it does not have a lot of weight, so it will not deliver a crushing blow. And speaking of crushing blow, it has just been crushed by its own blow. A very weak weapon that was probably once strong, but has been recently discarded. Now, Nuber has a real scythe. Unlike the club scythe, this is dedicated to scythe. It has a true, curved scythe blade, but it could also be classified as an extended sickle, as the blade is crescent-shaped instead of bearing a more linear design. He has a quick training session with this one, as he does not like it too much. It seems rather weak and he wouldn't want to break it. Now, Nuber's brought out a fire axe. This is a compact weapon that delivers blows of both physical and fire damage. Very effective against undead and humans, but not effective against armor or dragons. Too weak for Nuber. Next, Nuber has decided to pull out yet another halberd. This one has more weight concentrated at the end and is more of a club or hammer weapon, but it still has a blade and can cut rather effectively. But it should be said that it has a thinner pole, which allows for more maneuverability but less durability, meaning it could easily break. This is Nuber smashing it fairly hard, but Nuber is not, believe it or not, the strongest individual who has ever walked the kingdom of Ligas. This weapon would be reserved for peasants. Now, we have the double-bladed katana that Nuber had brought out earlier. He didn't like it too much, but he does kind of like the way it feels. It has 2 blades, but 1 guard. Very nimble. If both blades hit the enemy, that will deliver a much larger impact, but it can shatter rather easily. It's very hard, but not very tough, and that is not a good principle to have in weapons. If a weapon is tough, it will bend, but not break. If a weapon is hard, it will shatter. And speaking of tough, this is a great hammer, specifically a great club. Made out of wood, these weapons were used by trolls and ogres throughout history, but have made it onto the battlefield a couple times in real Ligas wars because of their effectiveness. They're beastly weapons and should be handled with care, as they are still made out of wood and not steel. Speaking of great, Nuber has pulled out yet another great weapon. This is a great axe. This one has slight powers of fire, as it has a red hint and is able to release small amounts of fire. But strangely enough here, an enemy has walked by Nuber and decided not to attack him. That's a sensible enemy if I've ever seen one. Nuber continues training with this heavy weapon used to crush skulls and cut heads. Executioner's weapons are very deadly in the battle, and axes are just that. Now Nuber has brought out a smaller weapon. It is still a great sword, but it is compact and lightweight. This would be an excellent soldier's weapon as it can be whipped around and slashed and can be stabbed easily. It, however, could not deliver monstrous blows that Nuber would want in his fight with Omig Oolagar and other enemies along the way. Finally, Nuber's brought out a very unique item. This is a weapon. It is also a war horn. It's made out of a very strong wood called rhododendron. It's found in the mountains that Nuber is currently in the Ligas. After all, most of Ligas is made out of a mountain. It is perched on a giant plateau. But anyway, it's a very strong wood, and has given Nuber immense strength and glory for what he has done. He's ready to rest. But after he gets up, he decides that he is hungry. After all, he hasn't eaten in days, if not weeks, months, or years. And he decides to cut open this hard zucchini. It may look soft by the way Nuber cuts it in half with his blade, but it is in fact very, very hard, and can withstand a lot of abuse before it splits like Nuber has done. After he eats enough, he decides he will train with it, just to satisfy his inner sword needs. It's a very good training buddy, too, as it can be slashed and stabbed and thrusted, and everything. Nuber uses some advanced techniques for this. And he also incorporates all parts of the zucchini, not to waste anything. When he's done training with this part, he admires what he's done and looks at all the pieces on the ground of zucchini that he has destroyed. And he decides he should test out his raw power, that is, his power without assistance from a weapon or club. This is fist. He begins punching it, and makes a good dent in it before he decides to throw it over the fence, out of true and sheer pride. Nuber is very happy now, and there is not many things that could fulfill him even more than he is now, except for defeating Omig Oolagar or discovering a groundbreaking item that will assist him greatly in defeating Omig Oolagar. And finally, he decides to throw the remaining pieces at this tree. This is testing his throwing power, and throwing power can be very important in fighting, especially melee fighting, as if one needs to run away, they can always look back and throw their weapon at their foe, disabling them. Nuber goes up to the tree, takes one last bite, and disembarks for his journey to defeat Omig Oolagar. No more delays, he thinks. He thinks it's all ready, and decides to look for Omig Oolagar. But, as it has been demonstrated, things can always change in Legas. Mostly for the worse, but sometimes for the better. Nuber has found it. The Green Chain Greatsword. This fabled weapon was used by kings and other high officials in the Kingdom of Legas in truly ancient times. Nuber is so confident in its power and ability that he discards his greatsword. The Green Chain Greatsword had humble beginnings as it was crafted by a blacksmith named Andre. This blacksmith was very poor and just decided to create a work of art. He didn't intend it to be used by many kings in the future, and he never knew as he died right after he created it, his blood spilling on the blade. But he created a wonder, a legend. Nuber knows this will almost guarantee a victory to Omig Oolagar as long as he finds and destroys the Great Shocker previously mentioned as the device that retains the force field around Omig Oolagar even if the two roots are broken. This weapon has truly immense power, but there is one cost. The blade slowly warps over time, going into a different shape than was intended. Nuber has found this crude hammer and a large other maul that he'd not found before. He has placed them all into the ground to use as a makeshift anvil, and is using the smaller hammer to bend the greatsword back into shape, and to restore its cutting edge. This is no easy job, as it was created by a legendary, fabled blacksmith, but Nuber thinks since he has intense strength and intelligence he can do it, and he does do it. The blade is wavy like a flamberge, but wavy in a different way. It's wavy perpendicular to the way a flamberge is wavy. If you hold the blade in front of you, the waves go left to right, and in a flamberge they would go up and down. This allows for an even more intense lacerating effect, allowing the opponent to bleed. After all that forging though, Nuber was tired. He decided he would take a real rest on the ground. He would not be standing up this time, as he does not fear anything now. Omig Oolagar won't come to him, and anything else that would come to him would be too weak to defeat him. He's very confident, and he is ready to battle. Although it still does lurk in the back of his mind that if he loses, the consequences are grave to the kingdom of Legas. But in current time, Nuber is now getting up. He rested for a while, a good amount of hours. And when he gets up, everything is okay. Nobody's bothered him in his sleep. And he's ready to go find the Great Shocker. The Great Shocker is a very strange contraption made out of a thick brown spring and a rust-colored glass ball. It generates immense power, as it was created by Omig Oolagar himself, forged in his forge. It generates so much power that it gives Omig Oolagar benefits, like his force field and extra power if it is not destroyed, even with the roots that are destroyed. All you have to do to remove it, though, is find it, and since Nuber is so smart, he can do that easily. He finds it hanging on this thick, thorny vine. It blends in with the color, but it is no match for Nuber's intelligence, and he's ready to destroy it. But before he dismembers it, he just wants to make sure it can actually shock you, as Nuber is a very curious being. Whether it can bring good consequences or bad consequences, he is willing to take a risk. But he knows this can't be too bad. This is the contraption shown here. That big, thick vine it is on channels its energy to Omig Oolagar. It goes through the ground and radiates throughout the kingdom of Legas. And the Great Shocker lives up to his name. But now it's time to get rid of it. Nuber just taps the ball off and then gets the spring on his sword and lays it on the ground. Once it's decoupled from the vine, it can't generate any power, therefore is rendered useless. It is good nutrition, however, especially the glass ball. They fall on the ground, and Nuber wants to play with them and destroy them, just to test his power. He knows they're immensely strong beings, and he thinks he can easily destroy them, even though they are made of such strong material, being glass and steel. He shatters the ball with one hit. The action of finding it, breaking it, and much less destroying it and obliterating it enrages Omig Oolagar, as it took him years to create the item. And the item protected him so well, Omig Oolagar is now worried even further than he was when he found out that Nuber had killed the second protector. Now, Nuber eats the items. At first it's hard to chew, but he eventually gets a piece off the glass. After all, it's very thick and very strong. He smashes it with his hand, his bare hand, to prove his force. And now, it's really come. Nuber takes a minute to think about what he's done and what he's about to do. It astonishes him all the progress he's made, and he departs on his final mission. But has anybody ever said that there can't be one more delay? I don't think so. There's always another delay. But delays shouldn't be thought of as bad, as they give Nuber an opportunity to better himself before the final battle. He finds this strange weapon. It's a triangular prism hooked to a hollow steel rod. It appears very similar to that rhododendron stick he had found before. It's a war horn. You can blow through it and create noise. He also sees this. It's a collection of 2 gourds. Prime testing material. They're very hard, so breaking them is a good challenge. Nuber wants to see if this weapon is effective and see if his own strength is effective. And it appears it is. It crushes the gourd in one fell swoop. This gourd was no match for Nuber's rage. And he grabs the other gourd and tests it too. The result is the same. Nuber is pumped. He's ready to defeat the notorious Chaos Leader who's been plaguing the kingdom for decades. He thinks it is strange that it took so long for a savior to be generated, but is glad that he could have the opportunity to do this, not to advance his own fame, but just to have fun. Nuber has always liked medieval fighting, even in his previous life in Earth. And for him to come here, it's just a glorious dream. He could have never imagined it. He gives one final blow and then rests. After all, the plateau of Omig Oolagar is on the horizon, and he can see where he would be if he were to fight him. And he will fight him. He can't believe his journey is closing this fast.
Eat. 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 Eat.
And he really isn't ready to go. But then again, he is still thrilled. Thrilled to rid the world of its chaos, brought on by Omig Oolagar himself. He decides that this triangular-shaped weapon is obsolete, as it does good damage, but he would not be able to use it effectively, as he hasn't been able to train for it for a while. He gives the tower one last hit. That is the tower that he was up on previously when it was dark. And decides he is ready. But first, he finds this weapon, the weapon he'd found on top of the tower before. The curved sword of Lumpus. He decides it is now time to return it to the Ultima Altar, which is right under the tower. He didn't notice it before, but now that he has noticed it now, he can place the weapon there and give it full respect for what it has done in history. This is the Ultima Altar. It was actually once a weapon itself. The longer top piece and the girthier bottom piece were once one, and it was a great hammer used by only the strongest of knights throughout history. But it weakened and broke eventually, and since it was such a great weapon, arguably the best in Legis' history, it has been used as an altar, and other weapons are devoted upon it now. He then finds this strange curved greatsword, very thick at the bottom, and tapering off as it goes to the top. He takes one last look at the beautiful ultima altar, the fabled item, and then has to part with this new sword he has just found. He knows it is rotten and can't do anything, but he thinks it looks cool. Either way. And he also decides that his chain, with the rhododendron horn attached to it, is now obsolete also. All he needs is the green chain greatsword that was forged by Andre. He does indeed take one last look at some of the cooler sticks, such as the curved greatsword, and realizes it is now actually time. Time to defeat Omig Oolagar. Nuber was so astonished that he had to make sure that he was dead. And he was. Aside from returning home, there were only minimal tasks for Nuber now in the kingdom of Vegas. One of them being restoring the dagger of Lumpus, the other weapon that accompanied the curved sword of Lumpus. It would go in the Ultima altar. This is just an act of courtesy and respect. And Nuber is proud to do it. He travels across the plains and goes under the tower to find the Ultima altar. Once the dagger of Lumpus is placed on the altar, and the rush of killing Omig Oolagar wore off in Nuber, it felt eerie being in Legas. He knew the kingdom was saved, but something wasn't right. Nothing that he controlled or nothing that he could fix, just that he was absent in his home planet Earth. He needed to return, and being here was doing no good. It wasn't doing harm, but there was no reason to stay here. It was surreal, and Nuber couldn't explain it until he would return home. And, luckily, he knew how to return home. But first, out of an act of courtesy, he took the 3 buddies that saved him in the battle back to the altar and placed them there, to keep the kingdom of Legas running smoothly. If you noticed, in the middle of the battle, the 3 buddies dropped themselves on him, restoring his power. If for some reason they weren't there, the buddies, the kingdom of Legas would have been lost to the chaos, because Nuber was dead at that point and had been revived. He was extremely grateful. And he was even more grateful for the friends that had moved themselves into the burning bushes to say goodbye to him. Of course, Omig Oolagar's hammer had been transported there, and a goat, a cat, another cat, and 2 gnomes had gone to visit him. But the most important thing of all was El Clubo. This is a mysterious artifact resembling a Mexican art in Earth. If consumed, like Nuber is doing now, it will allow him to transport himself back to Earth. It is the first step in the process. But by process, I only mean 2-step process, as the only thing next is to consume the gas ball. The gas ball is exactly what it sounds. It's a strange living creature that smells of gas and is in a ball. Slightly squishy and semi-opaque. It is small and can fit in your hand easily, even on the tip of your finger. But it induces a voluntary death. It will kill Nuber, but the gods of Legas will realize that Nuber had wanted to kill himself, in that he had defeated the Chaos Leader and was ready to return home. Nuber was so ready to do this that he did it almost immediately upon finding the gas ball. You could see that it was placed on its own altar, a small thing, directly in the sun for easy visibility. And he dies in front of the Old One, who will assist in the transportation back to his home planet. And with that, Nuber in Legas fades away and will become Nuber in Earth. Once he's back, he goes back inside of his standard house and will remember what he's done for the rest of his life, but he won't tell anybody. Nuber has also changed much over his journey. He began a crude clubber, and then became an advanced and unique swordsman, a very talented individual as he rebirthed. But something else changed as Nuber progressed in his journey: the level of chaos. At first it was low, but as he progressed and angered Omig Oolagar even further out of fear, the chaos level increased drastically, and by the end, the creatures were moaning and screaming at him for help. The chaos was intense, but when he defeated Omig Oolagar, it turned light again, because he had won the battle against chaos, and secured Legas a spot on the world stage forever. Technically though, this is not forever, as another chaos leader could emerge, not Omig Oolagar, but perhaps one of his followers or offspring.
and could seek to destroy the kingdom of Ligus and make it dark once again. Another savior would have to be found, one even more courageous than Nuber. Nuber and this new savior would have the same goal and the same tasks: to keep the greatness alive that is Ligus. It bears great castles and structures forged by great men, but Nuber did not venture to these places for a reason. Omig Oolagar had set up shop and was attempting to take over the kingdom from a rural region. Omig Oolagar thought this would disguise him better, and would make it so nobody would find out about his disastrous plans. But that was wrong, as the kingdom called a savior, being Nuber, to defeat him. Nuber was from this part of Ligus. That is, Nuber that's from Ligus itself, not the Nuber from Earth, of course. And, because Nuber did eventually banish Omig Oolagar and his buddies, the Protectors, he sent all the evil creatures back down to where they belong. All those creatures, the Protectors, and even Omig Oolagar himself, are now forced to be tortured by their terrible landscape, down in the depths of Ligus. These areas are places that nobody shall visit, because they will not want to reawaken the chaos. But I think it should be continually reiterated that Nuber's courageousness, in these situations of battle, are the real things that save the kingdom of Ligus. He defeated his foes with pride, and never stopped. He was beastly. He is the one to thank. And now, because of Nuber, the entities that reside in the kingdom of Ligus can live peacefully for a while. But once again, that is not forever. But hey, for now, the kingdom, the empire that is, of Ligus, will be safe.